Today's video dedication is brought to you with thanks from Dan Kirch. Lathiel versus Rakka, Drakuseth and Zedruu. A decent opening hand for us, so I will certainly keep that one. Turn 1 Sol Ring from Zedruu. We draw into a Sunpetal Grove on turn 1. Don't think it really matters if we get down a Soul's Attendant that quickly, so I'll just go for the tap land here. And Esper Sentinel missing out on 1 point of life from the Soul's Attendant. The mono red players just continuing to play out lands. We draw into Armorcraft Judge. So I think we're okay to just go for the Soul's Attendant here. Wall of Runes for Zedruu. A Mana Flare from Drakuseth. So may well see their commander as quickly as next turn. The double mana allows down a Thunderblust for Rakka, and then the floating mana a Flamekin Harbinger. So guessing that this is an elemental tribal deck, as you might be able to expect from Rakka. And likely thanks to the life gain, the Thunderblust swinging in towards us. We draw into Ondoing Version, a board wipe that is probably intelligent to keep hold of for now, especially with double mana flying around. So let's go Radiant Fountain, that will give us 2 life. We're going for our commander this turn, so can start piling on counters onto the Soul's Attendant. Could take us out of range of board wipes against red players. That triggers the Soul's Attendant, going to add a life there, and gain a life from the Scavenging Ooze as well. Going to be able to start exiling people's graveyards. I'll hold back the Soul's Attendant because it's going to be a half decent blocker for us, considering the amount of plus counters it's about to get. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria on turn 4. And another Planeswalker, Dovin Baan. I think they just went for the plus on the Teferi there, surprisingly. I think I might have minus down and got rid of this thing. The Dovin Baan giving a -3 debuff onto the power of the Thunderblust. White and blue mana untapped by Teferi at the end of the turn. We can see Drakuseth here, don't have any haste in play though, thankfully. They do get down their commander though, we'll have to see if they've got a 1-drop that allows them to give the Drakuseth haste. A creature entered there, triggering the Soul's Attendant, so I'm going to put a counter on the Scavenging Ooze, because it's not likely that we'll be able to put a counter on it by exiling a creature from a graveyard. I want as many creatures with plus counters on as possible to make the Armorcraft Judge better. Thunderblast swings in towards Dovin this time, and being blocked by the wall here, so going to get rid of the Wall of Runes. Didn't look at what was tutored with the Flamekin Harbinger actually. They searched up with that an Ashen Fire Beast. Playing before that a Nova Chaser. Alright, and in response the Jeskai player goes for, that is Jeskai Barricade. So we end up gaining 2 life in total here so far. Championing away the Flamekin Harbinger, which they won't mind coming back into play again. And then another creature, that is Molten Sentry. And that entered as a 2/5 as opposed to a 5/2. Lathiel triggering again, so we'll just dump more counters onto the Scavenging Ooze. 3 in total. Not seen a board wipe yet, glad to see that we've got Path to Exile for the Drakuseth. Throw down a Plains. We've got 8 mana here, so yeah, let's go for Heliod the Suncrowned first. We're going to have to go for the Path to Exile this turn onto Drakuseth because we're not going to be able to hold up any mana. So we'll go for green and white. Make sure to float a white mana. Then Armorcraft Judge coming into play, so let's put Armorcraft Judge on the stack first. Then Soul's Attendant can gain us life. And that means Heliod will allow us to put a counter onto the Armorcraft Judge. Let's put it on the Lathiel actually. More difficult to get counters on Lathiel because it can't put plus counters on itself. Then it's Path to Exile onto the Drakuseth. And Esper Sentinel going to trigger, we cannot pay for that. Thanks to the Path to Exile and the double mana though, they can just get their Drakuseth straight into play again next turn, because that 1 basic they fished up will tap for the 2 mana in the command attacks. Armorcraft Judge going to resolve here, that will draw us 3 cards. Access to an Enlightened Tutor, so we can, yeah, depending on how we think the game's going, we can just fish out the Walking Ballista and go infinite next turn. So I think it's time to try and deal with some of these walkers now. Definitely want to be dealing damage to Teferi, so we'll just swing everything here in at Teferi. They can either lose some creatures, or they can lose their Planeswalker. Deciding to block the 6/6 Scavenging Ooze with the wall. And then Esper Sentinel is blocking the Soul Sister, so that is 3 damage from our commander, goes through to Teferi, and they lose their creatures. We gain a life to lifelink, so plus counter on the Armorcraft Judge. Going to have to pile as many counters on there as possible because it is going to be our only blocker. So Lathiel can dump as many counters as we can. That is 4 counters from the Lathiel. And then we see our first board wipe. Thankfully the Heliod wasn't animated because that is a Terminus. We'll likely shuffle in next turn, so we'll put them down in any order. Nova Chaser is going to bring the elemental back in that tutors thanks to the champion effect, so Flamekin Harbinger back into play. This time searching up a Volcanic Rambler, and Tezzeret's Gambit going to draw them 2 cards and proliferate an extra plus counter or loyalty counter on each of the walkers. Each Planeswalker plussing, and they untap a couple of lands at the end of the turn thanks to Teferi, again going for white and a blue. So I think we will go for the Walking Ballista because I think that Zedruu will have a combo held up there, or a counter spell I should say. It's us that's going for the combo. Temple of the False God going to tap for 3 mana thanks to Mana Flare. So now we see Scourge of the Throne. Another dragon coming into play here. Looks like they've got something else for us. That is a Gilded Lotus. And the Jeskai player doing something in response. That's Semester's End. Exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control. Return each of them to the battlefield under your control at the end step. Yeah, not sure why they've done that. Nothing else from the red player, so Semester's End brings the planeswalkers back into play. Sulfuric Vortex for the Elementals player. And the commander coming into play as well, that is Rakka. Tapping that down straight away because it does have haste, and the 3/1 swings straight into Delving Barn. So knocking that down to 1 loyalty, we will take 2 damage to the Sulfuric Vortex, and yeah, we've still got the mana for the Walking Ballista, so let's go for the Enlightened Shooter. So obviously drawing into the Walking Ballista, drop a land for the turn. Going to have Walking Ballista come in with 2+ counters on it, so that we can remove one of them when it's got lifelink from the Heliod. We'll also be able to give this thing lifelink on the stack, so if they point removal at it in response to this Heliod, we'll be able to do it again. So Heliod targeting the Walking Ballista, going for the combo now. Alright, that successfully gets lifelink, so all we do now is remove a plus counter, deal 1 damage to an opponent. That will be lifelink damage because it's damage from the creature. No, I completely forgot about the Sulfuric Vortex there. Yeah, when that was on the stack, I was looking at it thinking, there's something about that. And yeah, that niggling sensation in my mind was obviously the fact that I wasn't remembering that you can't gain life. Well, we'll see if we can make it round another turn cycle here. See if our opponents are worried about Walking Ballista combo. Whilst we can't gain life because we do have Night of Autumn that we can get rid of the Sulfuric Vortex with. But yeah, bad play by me, not checking the Sulfuric Vortex. Go for the Zedruu, the Great-Hearted into play. And the Delving Barn plussing, that went on to the dragon over here. Plus onto Teferi as well. And then Zedruu curiously handing the Teferi over to the Elementals player. Wayfarer's Bauble being played and cracked by the dragon player. Drakuseth back into play, they've got 3 cards in hand and no haste. Swinging in at us, likely to trigger the dethrone. So plus counter going to go on that. They do untap this dragon of course and get an additional combat phase after this. And then instead of swinging in at us for the +1/+1 counter, instead deciding to finish off the Delving. Teferi minusing down and getting rid of the Drakuseth, so yeah, it looks like they're not worried about our combo. There is double blue held up over here with 5 cards in hand, so may well be able to counter the Night of Autumn. Volcanic Rambler, we saw them tutor for previously. It's noteworthy that that will deal 1 damage to their Teferi as well if they decide to activate that. Rakka being activated to make another 3/1 elemental. The 3/1 tokens each swinging in towards us. So managing to untap with the exact same board state. We'll see if we can actually combo off this time, unlike our previous turn. Alright, that is an Esper Sentinel. So maybe play that out alongside the Night of Autumn. And then if someone goes for a counterspell or something, we may well draw another card. So attempt to get Night of Autumn into play. That manages to come into play, so destroy the Sulfuric Vortex. Alright, and that lands, so now we can go for the plus counter onto Walking Ballista. They can still get us here if they've got some spot removal for the Walking Ballista. They can make us tap out. So then it's Heliod onto the Walking Ballista again, giving it lifelink. Alright, and it lands, so we shall try again. Lifelink damage from the Walking Ballista onto Drakuseth. And unlike last time, Heliod will trigger on the lifelink this time, so plus counter goes straight onto the Walking Ballista, and we do this forever. Alright, so just saying to my opponents that I've got the game there. I think they've all seen that, so we will scoop it up here if the client will actually allow us to. There we go, finally caught up. Yeah, so like I said, we win that one, but it's not exactly a fun way to win, so just for those of you that want to carry on watching these decks, and for our opponent's sake as well, they can carry on playing this one out. Swords to Plowshares from Zedruu went on to the extra combat dragon. And that's a card that I never get to play because even though it's a pet card of mine, I can never ever keep it in a deck. It's just not fast enough, unfortunately. Assemble the Legion. So this is Zedruu Group Hug by the looks of it, and Assemble the Legion going over to the dragon player. So this game could last for quite a while. It is Group Hug, but then they are using their removal on stuff as well. So it's kind of like Zedruu's playing a tug of war with himself. Playing Idyllic Tutor for that, so we'll be able to search for an enchantment. Searching up an Anointed Procession. Assemble the Legion triggers on the upkeep for the dragon player, so making a hasty soldier token. Then Endless Atlas. Only if you activate 3 lands with the same name, you can tap that and draw a card, so they do that straight away. 3 cards in hand. Then Drakuseth back into play again. Teferi plussing over here, and then it is Tefraderm. Then tapping down their commander for an elemental token. Whenever Tefraderm is dealt damage, or whenever a creature deals damage to it, it deals that much to that creature. When a spell damages it, then the spell's controller is dealt damage by it as well. They went straight through combat there, didn't swing in with any of the hasty tokens. It's turn 8 and there's not a whole lot of damage being flung around here. Anointed Procession straight into play, and wonder if that's going to be given to the Assemble the Legion player. Playing out Smothering Tithe as well, which is excellent with the Anointed Procession. But giving the Anointed Procession over to the Assemble the Legion Drakuseth player. Smothering Tithe goes over to Rakka, and then it is a Dockside Extortionist from the Jeskai player. So I think they get 6 treasure tokens here. Curious that they didn't do that before handing away the Anointed Procession. They would have got 10 treasure tokens if they'd waited on the Anointed Procession activation, I think. Yeah, it is 6 treasure tokens from that. And then just passing the turn with 8 mana held up thanks to the double mana on the land. 3 cards in hand. Assemble the Legion actually going to do some work here thanks to being given the Anointed Procession. They now have 5 hasty soldier tokens. Endless Atlas going to draw them a card. Will trigger the Smothering Tithe over here. Not paying for the tithe there. The Zedruu player's plan coming together nicely here. Drakuseth swings in towards the Elementals player. You would think the 4 damage would go on to the Teferi. Yeah, so it's 4 damage to Teferi. The Tutor Elemental goes down, as does the command. Yeah, so it was 4 damage to the Teferi, which goes into the bin. The Tutor Elemental and the Commander. Yeah, and the Rakka goes down. A lightning bolt to each of those. And then it's 7 commander damage. It's noteworthy that a red player isn't likely to do anything against the enchantments that are being gifted over here. Volcanic Rambler being activated, 1 damage to each player and Planeswalker. Doesn't do that to creatures, unfortunately for them, so can't get rid of these soldiers with that. Might as well use the floating mana, or the excess mana that they've got access to though. Haven't started their turn yet. So leaving the treasures intact there, they do manage to drop a land. Everything going swimmingly for the Group Hug player there. One of the tokens went down to a Scorching Dragonfire, so that was 3 damage there. Yeah, all of these swinging in towards the Drakuseth player. So it might be that they're going for a board wipe here. Drakuseth has something in response. That is an Arc Bond. Whenever it's dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each creature and each player. So they could wipe the board here, apart from the Drakuseth. Yeah, they could take 6 damage to this thing. And that's what they're doing. A lot of chump blocks might as well be made here because they're about to wipe the board near enough. Gonna keep some card draw off the Zedruu player here. Did they not block? They've got some soldiers left and I don't think they blocked this one. Maybe misclick there. Anyway, the soldier token was dealt that 6 damage. The Tephroderm is going to be dealt, well, it was dealt 1 damage during combat, so that was dealt to the creature. That's fine, but then the Tephroderm going to be dealt 6 damage. So that goes on to the player that cast the spell. Or actually, that was a creature dealing damage, so yeah, that goes on to the creature that dealt the damage, which has already died. Abrade is 3 damage onto the Drakuseth, so the last point of damage, or the last bit of toughness that it had left, goes down. That's 6 damage from the Archbond board wipe, and then 3 further damage from the Abrade. Obviously totals 9 damage onto the 7 toughness. They're having real trouble keeping this thing in play. Anyway, Ashen Fire Beast, we saw them tutor up before. They've got a lot of deal damage to everyone effects, but they are the ones that are struggling the most on their life total. Incandescent Soulstoke. They go down to 0 cards in hand, able to keep a board presence after the board wipe though. Zedruu taps down a heap of mana, plays out the commander again, and then into the Chain Veil, which is curious if they're looking to give the Planeswalkers away. Handing the Chain Veil over to Drakuseth, giving his Soul Ring untapped to the Rakka, then casts Wall of Omens to draw a card. Plays out Mana Crypt as well, 1 card left in hand. Handing over an untapped Mana Crypt to Drakuseth. 6 tokens being made at the beginning of Drakuseth's turn. Went for a card draw with the Atlas. Smothering Tithe once again not being paid for. Then casting a Mana Geyser that made 15 mana. They currently have 27 in their pool, so I'm guessing this is a big X spell. 29 mana they had floating and now paying into the spell. What is it called? Crackling something or other with the triple X, but it deals 5 times X damage or something. No, it is instead an Earthquake. X damage to each creature without flying and each player. So that will nearly take out the Rakka. They've decided not to take them out for whatever reason. So Ashen Fire Beast going to deal 1 damage to each creature without flying. And in response to that, it is a Fierce Guardianship from the Zedruu player, the 1 card they had in hand. So the Earthquake doesn't land, but the Ashen Fire Beast will have its ability resolve. So wiping out those hasty soldier tokens. Following that up with a Slag Storm, that is 3 damage to each creature, which wouldn't have worked, apart from the fact that there was 1 damage dealt to each creature before then. So the Wall of Omens and Zedruu goes down. Zedruu once again not going to draw cards there. Considering how easily we won with that combo, there has been a lot of interaction that's appeared. Chain Veil had them lose a couple of life there because they haven't activated a loyalty ability. Rakka back into play once again. Making an elemental token with that, and it is a Thorium Mauler, down to 0 cards in hand again. And then it is 9 damage in the red zone going towards Drakuseth. They'll have to remember that they're going to lose the Mana Flare if they take the Drakuseth player out. Everyone in top deck mode now though, not a single player has a card in hand, apart from the Zedruu player during the draw step. Zedruu into play once again, the first plus counter going on the Thorium Mauler. It will get 1 of those for every spell that an opponent casts. Following that up with a Wall of Glare, can block any number of creatures, a 0/5. 8 soldier tokens at the beginning of the turn. They are at 14 life, not sure if they took a bolt there or not from the Mana Crypt. Activating the Endless Atlas once more. Drakuseth into play once more. The opponents have been really lucky that there hasn't been any haste on that thing. Gratuitous Violence after that. If a creature you control will deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double the damage instead. I think I would have held on to that, because now our opponents have a chance to remove it. Don't forget that this thing can just wipe out the soldier tokens. The soldiers perhaps being allowed to live because they're all swinging in towards the Zedruu player, so yeah, the wall might block 5 of them here, or maybe just 4 of them to have the Wall of Glare survive. So we see 4 blocks from the Wall of Omens. Okay, going for all 5. Yeah, I was going to say if you go for 5 you might as well block every single one of them. Soul Ring played out by the Elementals player, and then just turning everything in sideways here. I think they've made another 3/1 token. That's what they should have done before combat. They've got 2 of them there. Can't remember how many they had previously. Yeah, all of those going into Zedruu, not finishing off the Drakuseth player. Noteworthy that Drakuseth and Zedruu and the Elemental player all still have 0 cards in hand. So could have finished off the Drakuseth. Zedruu being allowed to survive, and we'll draw some cards. So going up to 6 cards there, triggering the Smothering Tithe the bunch. They go up to 20 life as well. So maybe now these two are learning that they should in fact not be fighting each other and fighting the Zedruu player. Bunch of mana being tapped by Zedruu again. A Fog Bank, casting another wall in Wall of Essence. And then a Wall of Denial as well, so trying to buy himself time after the group hug shenanigans to refill with Zedruu. Birth of Meletis will make a wall next turn. As for now, just search for a plains. The soldier tokens being allowed to survive another turn, so it will be a further 10 soldier tokens here. See if they can get rid of the Zedruu player together. They're at 9 life again, not sure if they took the lightning bolt to Mana Crypt. Drawing a card to the Endless Atlas. I think the Drakuseth is between a rock and a hard place here, because if they go after the elemental player, they just lose all their soldiers to this. A Valakut's Awakening now. They only have 1 card in hand, so put 1 on the bottom and then draw 2. Never really got along with Valakut's Awakening, but I suppose it can do a little bit of card filtering for you. Another big X spell here. That is X equals 14, damage to any player. Oh, it was any target, and that actually went on to the Taurian Mauler there, so yeah, impressively able to get rid of that. Leyline of Punishment, players can't gain life, damage can't be prevented. So now Drakuseth swings in towards the Jeskai player. They do have a Wall of Omens to get in the way of that, although does have Shroud, so they can't point any additional damage in that direction. And then it looks like they're risking sending some of this damage into the right. The client's lagging like crazy here, so I can't see exactly where the attacks are going, but actually quite a lot of attacks going into the right. Yeah, really trying to force them to deal damage to all the creatures with this. 3 damage to the Fog Bank, and then 3 damage to the other wall as well, making it so that that can't really block. So in response to taking any damage whatsoever, yeah, I'm not sure why they swung in over here. I mean, they probably lose to either player in all fairness. The Drakuseth isn't in a good spot here, but yeah, I definitely would have piled in as much damage at Zedruu as possible personally. A further point of damage being caused by the Ashen Fire Beast, and then activating that again. And his Fog Bank, yeah, it's just combat damage on Fog Bank, so yeah, it will be dealt damage by the Drakuseth. The Zedruu going back into the command zone. Alright, so Drakuseth resolves, dealing the lightning bolt damage to Fog Bank. The Ashen Fire Beast actually must have killed itself. Haven't managed to get rid of Drakuseth or the flying wall. Well, of course, the Wall of Denial has 8 toughness, but there is additional damage being dealt here. So yeah, the Drakuseth does manage to get rid of the Wall of Omens, or Wall of Denial I should say. Obsidian Fireheart off the top, and then with a bunch of double mana they'll be able to pile on counters. So going for the Blaze counters, they trigger at the beginning of your upkeep. This land deals 1 damage to you. So really trying to get rid of Drakuseth, fancy their odds against the Zedruu player. There are 6 Blaze counters across the different lands there, and they do go for a 7th one, so not doing anything to Zedruu at all, just ensuring that during the next upkeep the Drakuseth player is going to go down. We see that wall token from the Birth of Meletis. Then it is more tokens with an Oath of Gideon. Okay, the client's just crashed on me here. I managed to get back into the game thankfully. Can't remember what I actually covered last turn. The Zedruu has come back into play. Looks like there are... Oh my god, Magic Online, you are so shit. The Drakuseth player was obviously taken out by the flame counters that were on the lands, so they are down. Didn't realise that's how it worked. I thought these got exiled instead, but they've gained control of Assemble the Legion, Anointed Procession, the Chain Veil. They've just played out a Court of Ire, also a Hover Barrier. So yeah, looking like it's going to be pretty good for the Zedruu player, having his opponents look after the Assemble the Legion all game. So a bunch of soldier tokens. Noteworthy that Zedruu is swinging in towards a 4-4. So, alright, instead of blocking Zedruu, blocking a 1-1 core ally. 3 cards in the Zedruu player's hand. They are at 17 life, knocking the elemental player down to 8. And then they will lose 2 life to the Chain Veil. And they're the Monarch thanks to the Court of Ire, so we'll draw a card as well. I'm not sure if they've worked it out here, but Obsidian Fireheart is going to put a bunch more counters onto lands. They might get some help from the Mana Crypt. Could deal 3 damage to them. The Court of Ire only deals 7 damage directly to their face. Yeah, and that triggers on the upkeep, so because it's their upkeep, they'll be able to decide which way around the triggers go, so they'll be able to gain life with Zedruu first, because that's at the beginning of the upkeep as well. They have no cards in hand, so I'm guessing that they just dropped a land this turn. Looks like it's 7 lands here. Bunch of triggers go on the stack, including a bunch of tokens from the Assemble the Legion. So Court of Ire, like I said, 7 damage directly to them because they are the Monarch still. Correctly throwing all the damage on the stack first and then having Zedruu resolve before all that. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lands that have the flame counters on them. So our opponent wouldn't have had them there anyway, even if it wasn't for the Zedruu. Zedruu does get knocked down to 10 life before the Mana Crypt though. Assemble the Legion, going to make 14 elementals, or 14 soldier tokens I should say. Oh, actually it gets the counter put on it, yeah, so it's 16 tokens created by Assemble the Legion. 8 cards in hand for Zedruu. They did get bolted, so they go down to 7. And then it is True Conviction, so they're going to gain a bunch of life here anyway. Double strike and lifelink on all of their creatures. And then everything is turned in sideways. We'll only see the first strike damage here. But if they got the double strike damage in, they'd actually go north of their starting life total here. So there we are, down to -32. Oh, and they do go back up to 40, so exactly at their starting life total. Hopefully you all enjoyed that one. If you'd like me to carry on in games like that where I win quickly and try and showcase my opponent's decks a little bit, then be sure to let me know. If you'd just like me to win the game and then get on with another game in which I actually play, then, well, let me know what you think either way. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.